These are 20 hidden facts about the good, the bad, and the ugly that reveal the extraordinary dangers, creative genius, and sheer luck behind one of cinema's greatest westerns. Between May and July of 1966, Sergio Leone and his team accomplished something that goes far beyond what appears on screen. You grew up watching Clint Eastwood squint through cigar smoke in that iconic final standoff, and you know this film is a masterpiece. What you probably don't know is how close the production came to complete disaster, how many near-fatal accidents put actors' lives at risk, and the creative decisions that transformed a $1.2 million production into a film that would earn nearly $39 million worldwide. Fact number 1. Eli Wallach nearly died 3 separate times during filming. Eli Wallach played Tuco with unforgettable energy, and the performance nearly killed him 3 times. These weren't close calls or exaggerated Hollywood stories. These were moments where the smallest mistake would have ended his life. Acid poisoning came first. A film technician placed a bottle of acid right next to Wallach's soda bottle during a break, and the acid was being used to weaken those prop bags of gold for dramatic bursting effects. Wallach grabbed what he thought was his drink and took a sip. The bitter taste hit his mouth and he spit it out immediately, but the damage sent him to medical treatment and left him filming for days with painful sores covering the inside of his mouth. Years later, in a 1975 interview, Wallach recalled the moment with lingering shock, saying the idiot prop man had put the acid in that bottle and he knew it was acid the second it hit his mouth, so he spit it out and got lucky. The hanging scene nearly killed him next. When the prop gunshot went off to cut Tuco's noose, the loud bang terrified the horse standing beneath him and the animal bolted at full speed with Wallach's hands tied behind his back. That horse ran wild for nearly a mile while Wallach desperately tried using just his knees to stop the animal, having zero control with his hands bound tight for the shot. The third incident remains the most chilling. During the scene where Tuco breaks his chains by laying them across railroad tracks, neither Wallach nor any crew member realized that heavy iron steps jutted out approximately 1 foot from each boxcar. The train passed directly over Wallach's prone body and those sharp metal steps came within inches of his head, and raising his head even slightly at the wrong moment would have meant instant decapitation. You can actually see those steps passing dangerously close in the final shot. Leone wanted to reshoot from a different angle, but Wallach refused to put himself in that position again. Looking back on the experience, Wallach said Leone was brilliant, but very lax about ensuring the safety of his actors during dangerous scenes. Fact number 2. The bridge explosion was accidentally destroyed before cameras were rolling. The spectacular bridge explosion required the Spanish army to construct an entire bridge with their military engineers, and this was a full-scale structure that needed powerful explosives with only one chance to capture it on film. The detonation signal was supposed to be the Italian word vai, meaning go, spoken clearly over the walkie-talkie when all cameras were rolling. A crew member casually said vai vai to another worker during preparation, and the Spanish army captain heard what he thought was the official signal and detonated the bridge immediately. The explosion went off perfectly with flawless timing and spectacular pyrotechnics, except absolutely no cameras were rolling and not a single frame was captured. Leone's legendary temper erupted and he fired the crewman who'd given the accidental signal on the spot, and the terrified man fled the set. The Spanish army captain felt partially responsible and offered to rebuild the entire bridge with one condition, which was that Leone had to rehire the fired crewman and give him his job back. Leone needed that bridge far more than he needed revenge, so he swallowed his pride and agreed. The Spanish army sappers set to work. The bridge was reconstructed, and the second take with cameras definitely rolling became one of the film's most memorable sequences. Leone later acknowledged the scene was partly inspired by Buster Keaton's silent film The General, paying homage even in a moment of chaos and frustration. Fact number 3. Clint Eastwood wore the same poncho through all 3 films and never washed it. That iconic poncho Eastwood wore through the entire Dollars Trilogy was never washed, not even once across all 3 films spanning from 1964 through 1966. The poncho started its journey in a fistful of dollars, where it took 7 bullet holes from Ramon's Winchester during the Climactic shootout. For a few dollars more, the wardrobe department sewed those holes shut, but you could still see the repairs, so Eastwood wore it backwards during much of that second film to hide the visible stitching. By the time filming started on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in May of 1966, that poncho had accumulated 2 full years of Spanish dust and actors' sweat, and the kind of lived-in authenticity no costume department could artificially create. Years later, Eastwood confirmed all of this, saying he still had the poncho sitting in a glass case, and it had never been washed because if you washed it the thing would fall apart. After filming Wrapped, that poncho remained folded and untouched from 1966 until 2002, an incredible span of 36 years before Eastwood eventually loaned it to a Mexican restaurant in Carmel, California. The brown appearance you see in photographs and in the films comes from aging film stock combined with accumulated dirt and grime. The original color was olive green, but years of being unwashed and exposed to the elements gave it that weathered, sun-faded look that became so iconic. That dirty poncho became a character itself, carrying the entire visual history of Eastwood's journey on its fabric. Fact number 4. Ennio Morricone composed the entire score before filming began. Morricone was Leone's childhood classmate from their school days in Rome, and he composed the entire score before a single frame was shot, which was completely backwards from standard practice, where composers watch the finished film and then create music to match. Leone played Morricone's completed musical compositions loudly on set during filming and choreographed his camera movements to match the score. This reversed approach allowed the music to dictate the rhythm and pacing of scenes rather than simply accompanying them. For the climactic cemetery standoff, Leone asked Morricone to compose something that felt like the corpses were laughing from inside their tombs, which is a delightfully macabre request. Morricone used a flute to represent Blondie, an ocarina for Angel Eyes, and human voices for Tuco, and he incorporated whistling, electric guitar, yodeling, and even gunfire as musical elements throughout the score. The most famous piece is The Ecstasy of Gold, featuring soprano Etta Del Orso, which plays during Tuco's frantic cemetery search. The soundtrack reached number 4 on the Billboard Pop Album chart, while Hugo Montenegro's cover reached number 2 in 1968. In 2009, the score was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Fact number 5. The film was shot with actors speaking different languages simultaneously. Eastwood spoke English while the Italian crew spoke Italian, and Spanish actors spoke Spanish, all at the same time during the same scenes, and nobody could understand each other while filming. Leone never recorded synchronized sound on set, so every word of dialogue was recorded later through a process called ADR, or Automated Dialogue Replacement. Leone played Morricone's music loudly on set, and frequently shouted instructions during takes, which would have ruined live audio anyway. For the 2002 restoration, Eastwood at 72 and Wallach redubbed the restored scenes while voice actor Simon Prescott matched Lee Van Cleef's distinctive voice, since Van Cleef had passed away in 1989. And if these behind-the-scenes stories are making you appreciate the craftsmanship behind classic westerns even more, make sure to subscribe to this channel because we're just getting started with the hidden facts that nobody talks about. Fact number 6. The Spanish Army built Sad Hill Cemetery in approximately 3 days. That massive cemetery where the final standoff occurs was specifically designed and constructed for this movie, with over 5,000 graves arranged in perfect concentric circles resembling a Roman arena and spanning approximately 300 meters in diameter. 250 Spanish Army soldiers provided by Franco's government built it in approximately 3 days. They got paid 250 pesetas per day, which converts to approximately €1.50 in modern currency. Leone wanted the circular design to feel like a gladiatorial arena where these 3 men would face off like ancient warriors fighting for an audience of ghosts. After filming Wrapped in July of 1966, the cemetery sat abandoned for nearly 50 years. Volunteer fans began a restoration project in 2015, and over 3,000 sponsors contributed $50 or €15 each to bring it back. Today it's a popular tourist attraction with Arch Stanton's grave and the unknown grave carefully recreated. A 2017 documentary called Sad Hill Unearthed told the restoration story, earned 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and featured interviews with Eastwood, Morricone, and James Hetfield from Metallica. Fact number 7. The Man with No Name trilogy concept was a marketing invention. United Artists created the Man with No Name concept as a marketing angle for American audiences, and Leone never intended these films as chapters in one continuing story. Eastwood's character has different names in each film: Joe in A Fistful of Dollars, Manco in For a Few Dollars More, and Blondie in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Leone conceived each as a standalone film, and only the enormous success of the first led to financing for a second. Then the success of the second led to the third. The timeline creates problems too. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is actually a prequel set during the Civil War in 1862, while the other films take place after the war. Blondie rides away rich with Confederate gold at the end, which creates a paradox about why a wealthy man would need to work as a gunfighter for a fistful of dollars years later. Leone was bemused by how American audiences tried to connect these films into one cohesive narrative, because for him they were explorations of archetypes and themes rather than chapters in one man's story. Fact number 8. Clint Eastwood hated the cigars and called Leone Yosemite Sam. Eastwood had grown weary of Leone's demanding perfectionist methods, which meant shooting the same scene from multiple angles with dozens of takes, and nothing bothered him more than those cigars. As a non-smoker, Eastwood hated smoking them for hours during filming. He complained to Wallach that Leone better get it this time because he was going to throw up, and later admitted he had no idea they'd taste so vile. Eastwood nicknamed Leone Yosemite Sam after the short-tempered Looney Tunes character, and his sarcastic complaint became famous among the crew. In the first film I was alone, in the second we were two, here we are three, and if it goes on this way in the next one I'll be starring with the American Cavalry. Leone and his wife traveled to California to persuade Eastwood to return for this third film after he'd been reluctant. They eventually agreed to pay him $250,000 plus 10% of US profits plus 2 Ferraris, which was astronomical compared to the $15,000 for the first film and $50,000 for the second. They never worked together again despite this compensation. Leone later said Eastwood moves like a sleepwalker between explosions and hails of bullets and is always the same, a block of marble. In 1988, they reunited in Rome for a dinner that resolved old grievances, and Leone passed away the following year, which made that reconciliation even more meaningful. Fact number 9. Lee Van Cleef's missing fingertip is visible in some scenes. Van Cleef was missing the tip of one finger, which he lost while building his daughter's playhouse. And if you watch closely during scenes with extreme close-ups of hands, you can spot it in several shots. Van Cleef maintained a personal principle throughout his career. "I don't kick dogs and I don't slap women in movies," he said. When his character was supposed to slap actress Rada Rassimov, Van Cleef refused despite her permission, and a stunt double filmed that moment instead. Leone originally wanted Charles Bronson for the role, but Bronson was committed to filming The Dirty Dozen. Van Cleef got the role, and it revived his career after a near-fatal car accident in 1959. Playing Angel Eyes made him an international star virtually overnight. When Van Cleef passed away in 1989, voice actor Simon Prescott had to match his distinctive gravelly voice for the 2002 restoration. Fact number 10. When you have to shoot, shoot. Don't talk. Was completely improvised. The most quoted line from the film was never in any version of the script, and Wallach improvised it entirely in the moment. The scene occurs when Tuco encounters the one-armed bounty hunter in the bathtub. The bounty hunter launches into a monologue about revenge, and Wallach just had Tuco shoot the man mid-speech and deliver that line. The crew burst out laughing, which confused Wallach because he was being completely serious from Tuco's pragmatic perspective, and of course Tuco wouldn't sit there listening to some elaborate speech when he could solve the problem with a bullet. The gun shop scene was also improvised. Leone told Wallach to just have fun, and everything you see came from Wallach's instincts, including examining guns, swapping parts, and shoving the sign in the shopkeeper's mouth. The shopkeeper's bemused reactions are genuine because he had no idea what Wallach would do next. Wallach also improvised Tuco growling at the old lady and numerous other character moments that made Tuco feel so alive and unpredictable. Fact number 11. The film cost $1.2 million and made nearly $39 million worldwide. $1.2 million was the budget, which was the largest of the Dollars films, and United Artists advanced $500,000 upfront with concerns about whether it would pay off. The film earned $6.3 million in Italy alone. In the US and Canada, it brought in $25.1 million. Other markets contributed $7.5 million, and the worldwide total reached approximately $38.9 million. That's a return of roughly 32 times the production budget. This wasn't just financial success, it fundamentally changed westerns. The film inspired approximately 200 additional spaghetti westerns, and between 1964 and 1978, nearly 500 spaghetti westerns were produced in Italy. At the peak in 1968, westerns comprised one-third of Italian film production. Leone had created an entire subgenre and revitalized the western when American audiences had grown tired of traditional formulas. Fact number 12. The final standoff uses different musical instruments to represent each character. Morricone assigned specific instruments to each man. A flute for Blondie, cool and controlled. An ocarina for Angel Eyes, eerie and otherworldly. Human voices for Tuco, raw and emotional. These themes weave together as the scene builds, creating operatic tension. Leone cut the scene to match Morricone's composition, using increasingly rapid cuts between extreme close-ups of eyes darting, hands hovering over guns, sweat forming, and the circular cemetery spreading behind them. Most westerns had straightforward scores that simply accompanied the action, but Leone and Morricone created something where music and visuals were equals, each enhancing the other, and building to a climax that remains one of the most studied and imitated sequences in film history. The scene is technically called a truel in game theory, which is a three-way duel where each participant must decide not just when to shoot but whom to shoot first. Fact number 13. The film was shot in Technoscope to save money. Technoscope was the format Leone and cinematographer Tonino Dellicali chose, which used 2-perforation 35mm film instead of standard 4-perforation, and this used literally half the film stock and saved money significantly on the $1.2 million budget. Technoscope created a grainier, more textured image though. When optically expanded for anamorphic projection, that grain became more pronounced, but what could have been a limitation enhanced the film's aesthetic instead. The grain gives it a rough, lived-in quality that perfectly matched the harsh world Leone depicted. The grain makes the desert look more brutal, the close-ups more intense, and the whole film more visceral. The technical imperfection became integral to the film's visual signature. Dellicali used extreme wide-angle lenses for sweeping desert vistas, then cut to extreme telephoto close-ups that made faces fill the entire frame and created Leone's distinctive style. Fact number 14. Roger Ebert initially gave it 3 stars, then later called it a great movie. American critics in December of 1967 were brutal. Variety called it a curious amalgam of the visually striking, the dramatically feeble, and the offensively sadistic. The New York Times wrote it must be the most expensive, pious, and repellent movie in the history of its peculiar genre. The Los Angeles Times called it the bad, the dull, and the interminable. Ebert gave it 3 stars, but years later reflected he'd described a 4-star movie and only gave it 3, perhaps because it was a spaghetti western and so could not be art. He eventually added it to his great movies collection with full 4 stars. Critical opinion completely reversed over time. Today the film holds 97% on Rotten Tomatoes from both critics and audiences. On IMDb it has an 8.8 rating and sits in the top 10 of the IMDb Top 250. It appears on Time magazine's 100 Greatest Movies of the Last Century, Variety's 50 Greatest Movies, and Empire magazine's top lists. This transformation from critical scorn to universal acclaim is one of cinema's great redemption stories. Fact number 15. Quentin Tarantino called it the greatest achievement in the history of cinema. Tarantino voted for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as his #1 choice in both the 2002 and 2012 Sight and Sound polls, where critics and filmmakers vote for the greatest films ever made. He's called it the best directed film of all time and the greatest achievement in the history of cinema. Leone's influence runs throughout Tarantino's work. The Mexican standoffs in Reservoir Dogs, the extreme close-ups in Kill Bill, Morricone-style music in Django Unchained, and the wide vistas of The Hateful Eight, which Tarantino shot in 70mm specifically to honor Leone's widescreen compositions. Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Kim Ji-woon's The Good, the Bad, the Weird, John Woo's action cinema, and the John Wick series all show Leone's influence. Stephen King cited it as inspiration for his Dark Tower series. The Red Dead Redemption video games are essentially playable Leone, with dusty landscapes, morally ambiguous protagonists, and operatic Western atmosphere. Fact number 16. Metallica has used The Ecstasy of Gold as their concert opener since 1983. Metallica has opened every concert with The Ecstasy of Gold since 1983, which means for over 40 years, tens of millions of fans worldwide have heard that music echoing through stadiums before the band takes the stage. Metallica recorded their own metal version in 2007 for a tribute album called We All Love Ennio Morricone, and their cover was nominated for a Grammy. James Hetfield appeared in the 2017 documentary Sad Hill Unearthed to discuss the score's impact on him and the band. When Morricone passed away on July 6, 2020 at age 91, Metallica released a tribute saying his career was legendary, his compositions were timeless, and thanking him for setting the mood for so many of their shows since 1983. Jay-Z sampled The Ecstasy of Gold in his song Blueprint 2 in 2002. The Ramones used it as their concert introduction. Countless hip-hop producers have sampled various pieces from the soundtrack. The score was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2009. Fact number 17. The movie is actually a prequel set during the Civil War. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is set during the New Mexico Campaign of 1862, specifically referencing the Battle of Glorieta Pass from March 26th to 28th of 1862, and this battle ended Confederate efforts to capture Western territories. The other two Dollars films are set after the Civil War, so chronologically this is the first story even though it was the last film made. Blondie rides away with half of $200,000 in Confederate gold at the end, which makes him incredibly wealthy and creates the narrative paradox we mentioned earlier about why this same character would work for small payments later. The Civil War setting allowed Leone to make explicit anti-war statements. The bridge battle sequence shows Captain Clinton, driven to the bottle by the constant spectacle of death, overseeing forces fighting daily for a single pointless bridge, and this reflects Leone's leftist politics and critique of war's absurdity. Blondie's observation that he's never seen so many men wasted so badly had particular resonance when the film was released in America in December of 1967. During the height of Vietnam War escalation, the prison camp scenes evoke Andersonville Prison, which held 45,000 Union prisoners with approximately a 28% death rate, and the film shows historically accurate details of overcrowding, the deadline, torture, and a camp band playing while prisoners suffered. Fact number 18. The film had 16 minutes cut from the American release. The Italian premiere on December 23, 1966, ran 177 minutes with an intermission. The US release in December of 1967 cut 16 minutes to 161 minutes, and the UK went even shorter to as low as 148 minutes. 7 major sequences were removed. Angel Eyes at a Confederate outpost learning about Bill Carson, Tuco assembling his gang in a cave, extended desert crossing where Tuco tortures Blondie, Tuco finding a Confederate camp directing him to the monastery, extended monastery departure discussion, a creek scene where Blondie shoots an approaching man, and extended Captain Clinton interrogation. These cuts affected pacing and character development in ways that hurt the film. The extended desert torture made Tuco's revenge more comprehensible and showed why their relationship was so complicated. MGM released a restored version at approximately 179 minutes in 2003, Eastwood at 72, and Wallach returned to redub their lines for scenes that had never been dubbed in English, and this restoration allowed audiences to finally see Leone's complete vision. Kino Lorber released a 4K UHD Blu-ray in 2021, including both theatrical and extended versions, plus the true international theatrical version for the first time. Fact number 19. All three lead actors never worked together again. Eastwood, Van Cleef, and Wallach never appeared together again despite creating one of cinema's greatest ensembles. Eastwood never worked with Leone after this and declined the lead in Once Upon a Time in the West. He became one of Hollywood's biggest stars and eventually won Academy Awards for directing Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby. Van Cleef became a star in European westerns throughout the late 60s and 70s, developing a dedicated following particularly in Italy and Asia, and he continued working until his death from a heart attack in December of 1989. Wallach returned to American theater and film and had a long distinguished career. An honorary Academy Award came his way in 2010 for his lifetime of work, and he passed away in June of 2014 at age 98. They represented different career trajectories and approaches to their craft. They came together for this one perfect moment in cinema history and then went their separate ways. Fact number 20. The film inspired approximately 200 additional spaghetti westerns. Approximately 200 additional spaghetti westerns were produced after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Between 1964 and 1978, nearly 500 spaghetti westerns were made in Italy, and at the genre's peak in 1968, westerns comprised 1/3 of all Italian film production. Spanish journalist Alfonso Sánchez Martínez coined the term spaghetti western in 1966, initially as a derogatory term, though Italians prefer Western all'italiana. Leone's films defined the subgenre's characteristics, including low budgets, filming in Spain, anti-heroes instead of clear moral distinctions, graphic violence Hollywood's Hays Code wouldn't allow, extreme close-ups, unconventional music, cynical worldviews, and sparse dialogue. Most subsequent spaghetti westerns were cheap imitations, but some were excellent films in their own right. Sergio Corbucci's Django became a classic. The Great Silence subverted expectations by having the villains win, and the genre produced memorable work even if nothing matched Leone's artistry. The spaghetti western revitalized the western in America too. Hollywood westerns were becoming stale when Leone showed new stories could be told with new moral complexities. Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, released in 1969, was directly influenced by Leone's approach to violence and anti-heroes. Nearly 60 years later, Leone's influence continues. Every slow-motion shootout, extreme facial close-up during a standoff, anti-hero Western protagonist, operatic score in an action film, or Mexican standoff shows Leone's legacy. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly didn't just make money, it changed how Westerns could be made and what they could mean. 20 hidden facts about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly reveal just how extraordinary this production was. From Wallach's near-death experiences to the accidentally destroyed bridge, from Eastwood's unwashed poncho to Morricone's revolutionary score, from critical dismissal to universal acclaim, this film represents a singular achievement that almost didn't happen but ultimately changed cinema forever. If you loved learning these hidden stories about a classic you thought you knew everything about, do us a favor and hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your favorite moment from the film and subscribe to this channel because we've got plenty more deep dives into the making of cinema's greatest classics coming your way. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep the classics alive.